Hi students, this is a presentation to introduce the Environmental Justice Unit, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the Mass in Motion grant, which is one of the readings that's actually in the learning bundle. So the first thing to recognize about environmental justice is that this is an idea that we don't all have equal access to quality health care, safe places to walk, and clean air and water. That depending on where we live and depending on our zip code, we have unequal access to those things. The idea and the movement called environmental justice grew out of both the environmental movement and the civil rights movement. So one of the first examples of environmental justice movement was from the early 80s when a poor town in North Carolina that was mostly African American found themselves with a large corporation that wanted to put a huge new landfill and trash heap basically in their town. And they literally protested, laid down in the streets and said, no, we're not going to let this come to our town. It's mostly the low income communities where people don't have the power or the cultural know-how to say, no, we don't want this in our communities. So that's one example. Environmental justice includes and incorporates multiple elements that sometimes you wonder how they would all fit together. City planning, housing, land use, sanitation, health access, pollution, and parks. And when you start and you watch the film that's part of this learning bundle, you'll see how these start to come together. For a definition of environmental justice, I turn to this article that I should probably post on Blackboard as well. Known as the father of environmental justice, Robert Bullard, his definition I really like: to incorporate other social movements that seek to eliminate harmful practices in housing, land use, industrial planning, healthcare, and sanitation services. This article is actually about environmental justice in the Boston area, and one of the biggest points here that I think is worth looking up, and if you can look at this picture, you can get a sense, is that an example from the Boston area, all you need to do is look at the different areas around the Charles River and the Mystic River to see significant disparities between pollution, health, and recreation. So what I'd like you to do as part of this activity is go to Google Earth or go to Google Maps, look up the Charles River, look up the Mystic River or the Island End Rivers. These, get a sense of what is around those areas. What kind of businesses are there? What kind of running trails are there? And you'll really start to get a sense of what we're talking about environmental justice. So part of the learning bundle is to learn about a Massachusetts program called Mass in Motion. Mass in Motion is grant funded by multiple agencies actually in Massachusetts with the simple goal to help people in communities eat better and to move more. You can see some pictures here of farmers markets and community gardens. The communities in Massachusetts that are being served by Mass in Motion are 60 communities that have some of the worst health disparities. In particular, I'll be looking at Taunton. It's one of the closest communities to campus that has one of the highest obesity rates in the state. So you can see in this map the places where Mass in Motion has been working. The important thing to recognize here about environmental justice is that this Mass in Motion focuses on policies and systems and the environment. They're not just interested in making a walking program, for instance. The difference between programs and policies are as follows. If they created just programs, and then all of a sudden the grant runs dry or it's no longer funded, then the program goes away. So they're focusing on policies, systems, and the environment. How can we build the environment better? How can we build better walkways and pathways and buildings that encourage people to move more? Another important thing to notice when you're looking at policies, systems, and environment is how many different organizations work together to try to encourage wellness. So in this case, this is looking at the Taunton Mass in Motion, from the city government to the private partnerships, including the local hospital, to also the nonprofit partnerships. Sorry. What I wanted to mention about Taunton, and if we look at the surrounding towns, is that Taunton has almost a 30% adult obesity rate, and we look at some of the surrounding areas that are also fairly high. I would like you to look up your own town where you're from and to identify what is the child obesity rate and what is the adult obesity rate, and how does it actually compare to those that we're looking at here. One other thing is to think about how environmental justice impacts what we eat. This is a map of Bridgewater, and it introduces the idea of how easy or hard is it to get access to healthy food. So the idea of a food desert is discussed here. Tracts in which at least 500 people, or 33% of the population, lives further than half a mile or 10 miles from the nearest supermarket. So again, we don't all have equal access to healthy food if we can't get to a market. We know that if we go to Cumberland Farms or a convenience store, we can get prepackaged foods, but we can't get fresh, healthy foods. We might be able to get milk, but above that, we really don't have a chance to. So what I want you to think about for this learning bundle, I want you to read in Learning Bundle 3 about Mass in Motion. There's a link to that. There's also a community link to Morton Hospital. What are the health disparities we're actually looking at? Then there's a film, and the film is In Sickness and in Wealth. It's about health disparities in Louisville, Kentucky. So those are the 3 readings and films that I want you to look at. Once you watch the film, what I'd like you to do is write a couple research questions about the film. And what are you most interested in studying? From there, you're going to find 2 of your own articles to contribute to a learning bundle. So I will have another presentation about that piece.